everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Pizza at the Pagoda podcast. My name is Chris Graham. Thank you very much for hanging out with us here. And I am thrilled to once again be joined by our regular co-host, cadre, whatever you want to call them, cast of characters, Ben Carswell, James Watson, Jason Owens, and Mike McCullen. Christian Jasper is still on the new work schedule here, so unfortunately he's not joining us, which means his streak will stay alive. He will sit on 0 points heading into the Indianapolis 500 for our picks this season. Good work, Christian. We'll start things off, though, as we always do. Let's see. We'll pick... Actually, Mike McCullen just finished drinking his way through the TNT Shock Series race at Martinsville that you saw here on the National Racing Network. He was drinking for every self-spin. I'm pretty sure he's down to fifth of something by this point. Mike, what are you still drinking?
I am just drinking a Yingling. I wasn't drinking that heavily during the race. I just like to play things up for the viewers.
Oh, okay. Viewer one. I think you were the only one.
Yeah, that was rough. I am drinking a Yingling tonight. I am drinking Yingling tonight.
It's a good choice. It's a nice, solid podcasting beer. We'll take that.
It is.
Ben Carswell, what are you drinking?
I have a San Pellegrino Aranciata, I think it's pronounced. I don't know how to say orange juice in Italian, but that's what it is. Sparkling orange juice.
Arancia?
Jason, help him out.
Arancia is orange, and then Aranciata is orange juice. I think I'm saying that right. I'm sure I'm butchering it. Pesky could correct me, but he's not here.
Yeah.
And it has a couple shots of vodka in it.
There you go. That's a good start. What kind of vodka? The important question.
Well, I ran out of my Luxowa, so I'm going with Sobieski, which is another Polish vodka.
Fantastic.
It's very
Polish
good.
vodka.
It's a smoother vodka. Only Polish vodka, Chris. You know that.
Yeah, damn right I do. I have enough of them in the bloodline here that I'm married to. That yes, only good Polish.
You're surrounded by them, bud.
that is very much correct. Let's see, James Watson. James Watson, what are you drinking?
Something slightly a little more grown up, mellow yellow.
Will that turn your insides the same color as your iRacing livery?
Bold of you to assume they aren't already.
I'm sure it's burn into his eyes.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, Jason, what are you drinking tonight?
I'm drinking water, and just water.
Okay.
That's even more boring than what I drink.
I feel like Jason's still a little pent up after the shock race, so we'll let him off the hook tonight. I have a Belhaven.
I thought we were going to taunt him more.
Well, we could, but I don't know that we want to go there just yet. We'll save those daggers for later in the show.
This audience wants to hear about that in any way, shape, or form.
No, they really don't.
No one wanted to see that either.
And I thought we were going to have a pretty good show this week until I saw the tweet from Dirty Mo Media. You're listening to the second best IndyCar content podcast because Rick Mears is on with Dale Earnhardt Jr. on the Dale Jr. download this week. That is a must listen.
It is fantastic.
How did Dale Earnhardt Jr. become one of the best interviewers in the sports world?
Because he's a really likable and down-to-earth dude.
I guess.
Looks like Dave Despain Jr. I mean, I don't know.
Are you saying we're not likable and down-to-earth?
No. No.
We're subterranean there, Ben.
No one wants to talk to us.
You know what? Just for saying that, Mike, I'm going to get us a 500 related guest.
His guest will be one of our friends that is going to the
So, one of the 3 people on this show.
Yes.
Here's this guy, Phil. He'll be driving near Indianapolis in his truck next week. All right, let's kick things off here. First point of serious discussion for the night. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway announcing that they are installing the new electronic marshalling system, joining the ranks of F1, the World Endurance Championship. Basically, everybody that runs twisties runs these sort of their LED panels. It makes things very visible to the drivers, allows for signaling locations in places that you couldn't put a human marshal because it would just be too dangerous. All in all, a big time win for the Speedway to be and IndyCar for that matter to be implementing this.
100%. And I believe the press release also stated they are 237 times brighter than an iPhone. So I don't know
good.
exactly why that was the measurement of lumens they decided to use, but
He nits that.
relatable, I guess.
How many iPhones?
I was at a Mid-Ohio race. God, I don't even remember when. This is how long ago it was when they were testing those. And they rolled them out for like one of the morning warm-ups, the morning of the race. They had them all out. And I was like, oh, cool. IndyCar's gotten fancy. And then they had them out, and then they took them all in before the race started. Yeah. That was like 3 years ago. So,
you know what?
The times.
I would say in that instance, perfection is more important than speed, if that makes sense. I would rather see them delay something like that than have, like, I don't know how many of you guys remember the LED panel saga of the LED panels that were on the DW12s that just didn't work.
Missed the LED. They worked fine on the DW12s. They broke on the new body kit. They looked great on the old cars.
Or yes,
I was at the first race when they introduced those too. They introduced those at Mid-Ohio in 2015. That was the first IndyCar race I ever went to, and they were all excited about that. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And it was great. And every race I went to, I was like, these are perfect. They're way better than the WEC stupid dots. Like, all right, these are cool. And then they lasted for like 3 years, and then they had the really cool ones on the IR18s that could do flags and shit, and then they broke.
I don't want to get on the LED panel discussion. We'll save that for Marshall Pruitt's podcast. But
we'll just say harmonic resonance and move on.
Yes, and harmonic resonance that didn't break the panel; it broke the car it was attached to. I don't know how you pull that off, but that's really special engineering. All in all, so anything else we want to talk about here with the new marshalling system? Everything's pretty cool. It seems like we're kind of progressing. Do we think this is something we would want to see at ovals?
I say potentially yes.
Well, Texas has some form of it. NASCAR.
I mean, the ovals already have some type of electronic light to indicate yellows. So I don't know.
A lot of the SMI tracks have the yellow caution lights around the track.
I think most tracks do at this point. I really do think most tracks have some type of light for the yellows.
Correct. Well, they all have lights. My thing is more about I'm thinking of things like when you're at a place like Texas or Gateway, where you have to make your pit entry from the backstretch. You can signal pits open, pits closed, those types of things with those boards as well, where instead of just the blinking yellow lights, you can communicate info to the drivers, not just via the headset, but also via the signboards as well. I think there's a lot of potential use cases for those on ovals as well.
Be some value there.
I think
we'll see.
Well, let's move our attention then. We're finally out of Barber and Birmingham, Alabama, and we're back home again in Indiana.
And the drama's coming with us.
Yes, it is. All right, Jason, I'll let you pick here. What's the first of the dramas that we want to talk about?
Well, I think the first of the dramas is the 10 drivers that are deferring to Graham Rahal to speak for them. I think we're trying to figure out if those are the same or a different 10 drivers than the ones that spoke to Will Buxton about the aero screen. But obviously the Grosjean Rahal feud, as I believe the NTT IndyCar Series social media team is calling it, and is trying to hype up for the race this weekend, should be pretty darn interesting to see on track this week at the GMR global parent company of AMR Grand Prix.
Oh my god.
Oh boy. Sure.
I'm nothing if not pedantic.
Perfect
You
word
are
for
very
that
pedantic, sir.
description.
And it's why we love you.
I'm still trying to figure out and chase this thing down. Like, is there actually a story here, or is this just we're bored and there's nothing else to talk about?
You know, I was listening to the post Barbara Pruitt podcast, and one of the points that I really forget which one of you, I think Chris brought it up and Mike might have, or Jason, I think Jason partially agreed that there was maybe some credence to that Graham sort of speaks for the paddock. Marshall seemed to be really, really on board with that idea. It seems a little, I have a hard time buying that. I have a much easier time buying that Marshall just doesn't like Grosjean. That seems to be a thing. There was some very negative tones.
I think there's an Indy, and I've seen this opinion a couple places, and I think I agree with it, that there is definitely an IndyCar old boys club that definitely looks on outsiders, especially you've got a guy who comes from F1 and is instantly the most popular driver in the series and brought all these fans with him. And he drives like like he's been here a while, and he drives like he doesn't care what other people think of him. I don't know. I think that there's just this view that the paddock kind of looks down or looks at him and goes, "Yeah, we don't like this guy," and he seems oblivious to it. So either it's nothing, and we're getting clicks and getting our views in and our listens in, talking about something that's a non-issue. I don't know. I personally don't think Rahal speaks for the paddock because I don't know. It just.
If you told me he spoke for the old boys club, I would buy that. Actually,
yeah, I absolutely think that there's an attitude in IndyCar that everyone's kind of come up together, and guys who have who show up to the series are kind of looked at.
Speaks for the Lehigh Valley to Indianapolis crowd. I buy that.
Yeah. I wonder if he just, when he's saying all these things about, Grosjean can't hang in IndyCar around all the other drivers, they're just uncomfortably nodding at him, and he takes the nodding as thinking that they're agreeing with him. So that's where he's getting all these guys in the paddock agree with him. That's my guess at any rate.
Yeah, it seems to be this like, oh, we have beef. Like, this is not NASCAR. Okay, we don't need to do this. Not do this.
You know what? I'll sort of disagree a little bit. And maybe this is the old white guy in me, but I like hate. I'm okay with these guys not liking each other.
Yeah, but it has to be real. It can't be made up and manufactured. You don't need to promote and manufacture it. We all know that Santino and Connor don't like each other, and it's great for the sport. Like, it's good. They're two big personalities, and they don't like each other.
And we've seen both of them acting like they don't like each other. We haven't seen that at a Grosjean.
Yeah, it's not IndyCar on NBC going, ooh, there's a feud. There's a feud.
And that's really Santino versus the paddock. I don't think anyone in the paddock likes Santino, at least from what they say. But nobody other than Rahal has said that he doesn't like Grosjean. And I'm sorry, hiding behind Rahal, I've got 10 other drivers who agree with me. Who are they? Why aren't they saying it? Like, I don't know. I just think it's bullshit that he's like, I've got all these guys who agree with me and we don't know who they are. If somebody has a problem with him, I think these guys should all be mad enough to say, I don't like how he drives. And everyone else who was asked about Grosjean all kind of played it off. So, I don't know.
Is there something to IndyCar is very much an echo chamber? some of the stuff that Graham Rahal says is outside of towing the company line. Because if what we're hearing out of IndyCar drivers and team owners and management is that F1 having 2 races this season and 3 races next year in the United States is nothing but a good thing. I hate to tell you, it's not. But the company line says we're not in trouble. It's almost like everybody is just putting this front on of, we're not going to talk about Grosjean, everybody's buddies. No, F1's not a problem. We're just happy in our own little world here. Ignoring the realities of what's going on in the surrounding, the larger motorsports universe.
Up a really good point. And, you know, and I think this might be a difference between, you know, American centric things and European centric, you know, worlds, where if you like watch an F1 race, there is a lot more negativity from the drivers, from the fans, from the media. It's a lot more blunt. It's a lot more direct. Whereas you watch American races and pretty much anything, right? It's all sugar coated and everything's great and you can't talk bad about the series. And, you know, I didn't IndyCar at one point have like you couldn't say anything bad about the series like written into the rules, and NASCAR is kind of the same way. Like, you know, if you take Kyle Busch out of the NASCAR context and put him in the context of F1, he's not that extreme anymore. He's not that bad. You see these guys saying this all the time, whereas for our innocent American ears, right? If somebody says anything bad about the sport or bad about other drivers, it's like, oh, look at the bad boy. So it might be a cultural difference too.
It feels to me like we are getting back to resting on the laurels of we have the 500. Which that may have worked in the 70s and the 80s.
You mean the social media team that continues to run with the defy this or defy that or whatever nonsense slogan they've come up with for this season is resting on its laurels? No way. Get out.
Yes.
Car marketing is
Hold
bad.
On. Can we put the exclamation point on that by saying reusing the same failed plan from 2 or 3 seasons ago?
Hey, at least it's not the milk bondage video.
True, but I'm guessing that all of us are too young to be on the IndyCar social media team, and that's a really big problem. Because I certainly don't know, like, I'm totally like, how do you do, fellow kids, right now when it comes to the TikToks and WeChats? And there's no way that anybody over there on West 16th Street has any clue. It's like, go hire the Wendy's Twitter person to run IndyCar socials for just 1 month and see what happens.
I think those
We've
guys
seen like glimmers that there's somebody like with a clue in IndyCar.
And then they
IndyCar
probably
social media
fire
and
that
marketing,
intern, Mike.
but this like the chief marketing officer or whatever their title in IndyCar is an old white dude from the Midwest, and all the leadership is old white dudes from the Midwest. So even if you've got a kid with a good idea, they're gonna run it up the flagpole, and the old white dude's gonna be like, I don't know about this TikTok thing or whatever the kids are calling it. Yes, I know it's called TikTok.
Let's look at. I mean,
one of the people who actually runs IndyCar socials, Dontre Graves, who is from Indianapolis and is a HBCU alum. Basically, he came through the NASCAR Rev Racing ARCA diversity program, got his start there, and he now works socials for IndyCar. When I watched everything that he did with NASCAR, I don't see any of that happening with IndyCar.
Because the people in charge aren't letting him do it if he wants to do it.
You sort of made my point there, Ben.
We have the people there. They're just not, it's C-suite.
You very much made my point that I was about to make. Look at who IndyCar has hired as their last 2 hires, in fact, as director of communications. We got Kurt Cavan, who is a long time, 30, 40-year journalist with the Indianapolis Star. He left the Star to go work for the company.
Shining bastion of successful social media and marketing is the Indy Star.
And then they moved Kurt Cavan and they put Dave First in that job. Dave First is a middle-aged white guy. I mean, it's the equivalent of hiring me. I do too. I think Dave's very good at his job. The problem is you have people that are running the socials department. They're treating socials as media, when the reality is socials needs to be its own separate entity. It's almost like they need a special room for the kids to play in somewhere on one floor of the Pagoda, that we're going to make this the socials space. And if you're over the age of 35, you're not getting in the room. And let them have the ping pong tables and Xboxes and all the Google Appleification of the workspace that the younger generation is known for. Let them have that and let them go to town. Because what they're doing now isn't working.
I mean, if you go and you scroll back at IndyCar's Twitter, it's not good. Like, there's just nothing engaging. It's all either retweets of, like, the stuff the teams are doing, and none of them are really great at this. And it's retweets of, it's like 1 or 2 posts a day, and it's just not engaging. Like, there's nothing engaging here.
The Music City Grand Prix, which is one race that was new last year, that is run by the Tennessee Titans media staff, their socials crew does a better job of promoting IndyCar than IndyCar's socials team.
Same with the Detroit Grand Prix. I still follow the Detroit Grand Prix social accounts, and they are constantly hyping IndyCar, and it's not even for their own event. They are tweeting and Instagramming constantly.
Yeah, so is Music City Grand Prix, and it's like, how do these street festival events understand how to build hype and engagement over the course of the year through repeated interactions that the IndyCar social media team, air quotes, because I don't know that it's
social media is just outsourcing it to IndyCar on NBC, for example. That's a pretty active Twitter account. They've got, some decent content. They're pretty good with the memes. They were at one point, God, that is the oldest thing that I have ever said. I'm so sorry. They're good with the memes. Jesus Christ. But like during the race, they're like, "Hey, do you guys want to, have our studio DJ show you like what we're playing and put together a playlist?" Because that was engaging. Like the music that they were playing, to lead into and out of the commercials at Barber was actually good, was actually modern. Ben, I think even in the at one point in a chat, you were like, "Hey, this is actually good shit."
I said it was relevant.
It was relevant. And at least IndyCar and NBC is constantly tweeting stuff during races.
Well, it's
and also apologizing for Peacock.
It's interesting that you bring up NBC, because there was a pretty big discussion this weekend, and it started in the F1 paddock about how good F1's coverage is. Now, this is F1 people talking, but how much better F1's coverage is as compared to IndyCar.
Full stop. The camera angles, the shot packages, the slow-mos, the 4K and 8K camera shots from inventive angles put IndyCar's general race coverage, not including the Indy 500, to shame. Full stop.
Coverage treats its fans like idiots. F1 coverage and other motorsports treat their fans like they actually know what's going on. And IndyCar and even NASCAR, every single race is geared for somebody who's never watched a race.
Here's Rutledge Wood with a gopher. Let's see what's in this corner. Like, no, get that out of here. Like, I want to hear, like, I want to see more technical descriptions. But the Liberty Media and Formula One do it in a package that is approachable to new fans while still having a highly relevant on-screen graphics package.
And
we talk about, like, even in qualifying, like, nobody has any effing clue what's going on in qualifying. In
qualifying graphics are awful.
They're awful. Like, they're up, but on what? Or
hang
down.
on. So I heard James trying to get in, so let's let James get in, and then I have a point after James.
I was just going to point out that even before it was ESPN piggybacking off of Sky, F1 coverage in America had always been pretty good at explaining the technical side in detail. Like, the most fun I had watching F1 was back when we had our GOAT tier trio of David Hobbs, Steve Matchett, and Lee Diffie or Bob Varsha, depending on the time. And just listening to Steve Matchett and how he explained everything about the cars and how they operated, I always learned so much listening to him and just the joy he had.
100% agree with you. 100% agree with you. So the other comparison that I have to a really good presentation of a race broadcast is, and I'll say it again, and I am the biggest cheerleader for supercars from Australia in this country, but the presentation of supercars is by far one of the best ones that I've ever seen. Even in qualifying, their qualifying graphics are small, concise, but there's little rectangles next to every person's name and shows what they did in each sector. So you see the guy who's down in 9th during qualifying, and you see him start putting purple sectors up. Hey, that's the guy to watch. And then when he's on the final sector, they'll say in a graphic at the bottom of the screen what the time is to the current P1, right? That's a great graphic. They do that during the race. They've got great graphics. And then they have segments where, yeah, it gets a little technical, but it's done in an approachable way. Watch a Larco overview of what's happening during a race and what the tire strategy and what the fuel strategy is. It's deeply technical, and it's like, if you want to go that deep, but he does it in an entertaining and approachable way. It is by far one of the best motorsport presentations in the world. And the fact that IndyCar continues, and not even IndyCar, but NBC continues to treat all fans like they're idiots. They never talk strategy. They never tell you, hey, this is when we think fuel stops are going to be. This is when we think the window's going to open. Even NASCAR does that.
The depth of NBC's strategy discussion is, we're in the danger zone. Like, that's as far as it goes, right?
Drink.
Like, does anybody even know from watching an NBC broadcast on a weekly basis where the sectors on any given track are?
Address that American track sectors are just batshit on some tracks. Sebring's the worst offender.
Have like 6 sectors.
Well,
no, there's always the 3, but they're batshit.
We can ignore Sebring because we don't go there, and we're not going to go there.
But
thankfully,
they're still batshit.
However, there is a larger discussion point here that is, F1 is making inroads, and if you had said 5 years ago that F1 would draw almost as many viewers as NASCAR did for a head-to-head broadcast, I would have told you were high. IndyCar
Liberty is printing money with that investment now.
Yes, they are. And quite frankly, the company line of, we think F1 is good for America, I don't want to be, jingoistic or anything on this, but F1 is not good. If you're IndyCar, F1 needs to be the biggest problem you have right now. They are in as many homes as your network broadcasts are, because the people that have cable have ESPN. So saying we've got 9 races on the mothership NBC, that's great and wonderful. Yes, it's air quotes network television. People are watching it on cable or they're streaming it. So you're still getting ESPN. This is, it almost like gets my blood boiling, the fact that IndyCar is just going to sit back here and like pull the wool over their eyes. Like, we don't see a problem with this. This is rising tide rises all boats. You're not rising as fast as everybody else is. Ben, I want your input on this. I want to hear you uncork on this whole thing.
I'm not the right person to ask about F1 and America, because I really, really hate the way F1 comes over here and acts. I find it patronizing, condescending, and insulting, and a little ridiculous.
You mean like police escorts to the podium and 14 million douchebags on the grid? And let's talk about everything. F1 this weekend in Miami was the dumpster fire that European F1 wanted to be. They wanted to make Americans look silly and print money doing it, and they pulled it off.
They accomplished everything they wanted. They went up, they hammed it up in America, and I haven't gone and checked what the Americans are thinking about it, and I see the Americans. I mean, the ones who aren't F1 fans. You know what I mean? I looked at the Formula One subreddit, and the majority of them hated it. And the majority of them thought, oh, well, this is just what they do in America. They're doing the American thing. No, this is not what we do. In no way is this
Miami.
It's not even Miami. It's F1. It's a bunch of European idiots and money-hungry Americans who go, yeah, sure, whatever, I don't care. I don't care. I want to see a race. I don't want to see your WWE show. I don't want to see any of that. I want to see a race. And if this is what F1 in America is going to be, then take it out. Get rid of it. I'd rather wake up at 9 a.m. with my coffee and watch F1.
You don't want bare, unprotected concrete walls for drivers to wreck into? Ben?
Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Let's have go-kart sections on an F1 track. That's a great idea. Let's have tiny one-lane uphill chicane on an F1 track, because that's what makes sense. Let's have it in a parking lot, Will Buxton. It's a parking lot.
Tell me it's not a parking lot.
It is a parking lot.
Can we with a marina painted in?
And you know what? If this is what works, then this is what IndyCar should be. Okay? I don't care if it's ridiculous, and if all the middle-aged men, and I'll include myself in that because that's apparently how I think. Right? If we're all going to sit here, all the purists and all the elitists are going to sit here and go, but it's not as good as it should be. This is what we should do. Because F1 has leaned more and more toward these temporary events, right? Singapore is a big one. Jeddah. Miami's a pretty obvious example. They're going to be at Vegas next year. Because what's going to be there? Eyeballs. People are going to go, oh, what's this? What's going on?
Well, this
is what we need to do.
You just brought up the elephant in the room, quite frankly. F1 is not going anywhere. They made a $240 million real estate purchase on the Vegas Strip to build a paddock, a permanent F1 building on the Vegas Strip to house everything F1 in America. If you think Liberty is walking away from this market, you're kind of high. So
IndyCar needs to figure out what they want to do, because they're not. Look, internationally, you're not a competitor for F1. You're just not. So are you a national series? In which case, look at what NASCAR is doing, because they're one of the biggest national series in the world. Right? Maybe next to Supercars.
Potatoes to F1. Now,
I'm saying
cash.
I'm saying,
for that 39 acres too.
You need to figure out if you're going to be a competitor to F1 or a competitor to NASCAR, because they're vastly different things, and you need to figure it out. You're going to hand it
Car
up?
will never be able to compete with F1 because they can't bring that type of spectacle. There's no spectacle with IndyCar. There's no panache with IndyCar.
I disagree. You know what? Here's how I handle the F1.
You're gonna go back to the 500, aren't you? You're gonna frame it up as the 500.
Here's how I go. Here's how I handle F1. The whole comment of, and I forget even which F1 driver it was, saying, I really don't have any interest in driving that. They're not that tough to drive. I am sending Graham Rahal out there, if he's going to be the guy speaking for the paddock, looking an F1 driver dead in the face and saying, you don't have a hair on your nuts if you don't come out here and try driving the speedway then.
Yeah.
If you want to play that game, let's go. But you're not taking our turf. Go ahead, James. Sorry.
It's all right. To piggyback off of that, it's amusing watching all the F1 drivers and the teams complain about the porpoising and suffering from that when all of us IndyCar guys are completely used to that. Like every time you watch a race at any of the street circuits, especially Belle Isle, you see those cars are bumping up and down the entire race long. If they can't handle that in an F1 car, they would never be able to survive an IndyCar, because that's how these cars handle on pretty much most of the tracks.
Yeah, IndyCar is getting smoked by F1 in America, which is the problem. This is your problem. Your target audience is America. Everything else internationally, North America. I'll say North America. Everything else internationally is a bonus, is a gift, because there's just, it's never going to happen. You're never going to touch F1 internationally. Forget about it. Focus on America. You are getting beat badly. Now, if you're Roger Penske or president of IndyCar, whose name I'm forgetting, Miles.
Mark Miles, yeah.
Yes, Mark Miles. I thought that sounded like a made-up name. Vodka started to come into effect here. But if you're Mark Miles, you have to be looking at this and looking at the ratings and going, well, you know, we were so busy on trying to beat NASCAR, we forgot we just got beat. F1 just beat both of us in America in prime time. IndyCar's not putting up those numbers that F1 put up this weekend. Nowhere near it. So, I'm not the marketing guy here. You figure out your IndyCar, you pay the marketing, come in and go, listen, here's what F1's doing. Here's how you do your version of that to get the same, or I don't know, a similar scaled effect to IndyCar. Not going to get the F1.
But how do you get new viewers? How do you find new viewers organically?
That's why you hire a marketing firm. None of us are marketers. Go hire a marketing firm. They do
Get some interns to run your social media accounts, and boom, done.
I would honestly
let
love
the professionals
to see
you have run your social media.
I'd love to see a case study of how F1 has suddenly become super popular in this country.
Drive to Survive.
I read
it is Drive to Survive.
Drive to Survive.
It's Drive to Survive, and
that's fair.
It's the
which came at a perfect time when we were all locked in our homes for a year, and had nothing else to watch. Right?
Drive to Survive, and a commercial free presentation on ESPN that is very short-lived for this world. I don't think that is going to sustain because
I really
of
hope they don't geo-block F1.
Liberty saying they want more money out of that deal.
Well, if they geo-block F1 TV, I'm gonna probably stop watching it.
If you remember, when ESPN picked up the rights from NBCSN, ESPN got them for free. Quite literally, nobody in this country was willing to pay to distribute F1 races and produce them. That's why we get Sky's coverage, for that matter, because nobody is willing to pay to produce an American branded coverage of Formula One.
Which is good, because we'd probably fuck it up.
I mean, I would pay a lot of money to have Steve Matchett back on. Like
The problem
I've
is at this
got
point,
you-
Steve Matchett is the old curmudgeon-y white guy that's been out of it for too long. You need to find the next Steve Matchett if you're going to go that route. But quite frankly, there is not the mechanic guy on the Sky broadcasts. What you have is a presence in Crofty is very good at calling a race. I'll say he's good at calling a race. Martin Brundle just gives no fucks at this point. He's going to tell you what you're thinking. And then they have guys like Karun Chandhok and some of the others, Jensen Button stepping in on occasion, that have fairly relevant experience with these cars.
Karen is one of the best parts of the broadcast when they put him on air, in my opinion. Like we're talking about a guy that competently drove at Le Mans and in the WEC and knows what he's talking about, and he absolutely is fantastic. I wish he would be on the broadcast more. Right.
So the F1 TV broadcast itself, I forget exactly who the play-by-play guy is, but I think it's Joylan Palmer is color commentator, and then they have Sam Collins, I think that's his name, who is essentially their Larry McReynolds. He's the tech guy, and that is so much better. It's phenomenal. Because he's up there and he is literally fulfilling the Larry McReynolds role this year, where Larry's not in the booth. He's doing his own thing, and he's brought in at this he's here for a third of the race instead of the whole race.
Well,
they just
as
need more
needed.
Rutledge
Really good
in their
it's
broadcast.
so good.
Again, right? I was watching FP1, and if you listen to that and watch that, Jensen Button was absolutely brutal on that broadcast. If you saw an can you imagine James Hinchcliffe just shitting over a driver who's struggling like Jensen Button was doing to Yuki Tsunoda during the broadcast? You'd never see that in American media. I was like, holy shit, he's just ripping this guy, and you never see that. The relationship that IndyCar has with its media is that the media isn't reporting on IndyCar. It's essentially just another arm of IndyCar media, and they are paid to say nice things about IndyCar. Unlike us.
That is something
who just shit all over IndyCar.
Well, that's something that is common at all levels of auto racing coverage in this country. It boils down to, if you want to get into my racetrack for free, you're going to say nice things about us. I have local track promoters that email me saying, I didn't get the article from your guy this week. What the hell? It's not his job to send you his coverage. If you want to find it and see what we said, read our content, but we're not going to spoon feed it to you. And it works that way at all levels. Robin Miller was persona non grata in some instances around the IndyCar paddock because he shot straight on a lot of things. He was willing to call out and say, this is dumb, this isn't working, IndyCar's falling behind. And Tony George and some of the other people in the IndyCar paddock said, we're not going to talk to you. Eventually, you had to talk to him because he just kept calling you out every week. Hey, try to talk to Tony George again. He won't talk to me. Well, eventually, Tony George is sick of seeing his name in the paper. But that's where we are a PR arm of the sport. We can't say anything bad about the sport. Yeah, we can. We have a tire shortage in this country that is killing short track racing. We have part shortages that are killing short track racing. Everything about motorsports in this country right now is hurting, and it's losing the game to F1. We're willing to say NBC's coverage is really great because it's on network TV, not because the coverage itself is good. This requires a top-down examination of talent on the TV side, the social side, the PR side. Everything about how IndyCar is branded and marketed in this country needs to get thrown out, and we need to start anew. If I had the budget that IMS Productions has to cover the IndyCar series, I could do a lot more than what they're doing. But we're stuck doing things the old way, and it sucks because F1 does print money compared to what IndyCar does. So, of course, F1's coverage is going to be better.
It's funny. We've been, talking about how IndyCar, should be worried about F1, and F1's kind of taken over the American market. And what have we been talking about for over 20 minutes? F1
on an IndyCar podcast.
That brings up my next point, which is that we need to do our GMR Grand Prix preview.
That I was just going to say. Let's segue.
I don't want to talk about F1.
Coming up this weekend, it will be the GMR Grand Prix of Indianapolis at the 2.43-mile road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. 14 corners, 5 left, 9 right. All sorts of cool information here that we have available at our fingertips, but let's get to the important stuff. A 2-day schedule this weekend, which is a little bit surprising to me, considering it's basically a home game for everybody. 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. on Friday is IndyCar Practice 1, followed by Indy Lights Practice. P2 for IndyCar follows at 12:45. Qualifying for Indy Lights at 2 p.m. Friday. 4 p.m. on Friday is qualifying for the NTT P1 Award, available only on Peacock Premium. I'm not sure I understand 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon being your qualifying show, but okay, we'll deal with it. 10:30 to 11 a.m. IndyCar Series warm-up on Saturday, followed by race 2 for the Indy Lights Series. And then it will be 3 p.m. NBC on air. Drivers start your engines at 3:39 p.m. 3:45 will be the GMR Grand Prix. 85 laps, 207.3 miles. Couple of storylines that immediately come to mind heading into the weekend. Rinus VeeKay was very good there and is coming off a pretty damn good run at Barber. And Will Power sort of owned this place on the road course. James has a chubby now.
Yeah.
I think picks last.
Did he actually just get... Wait. Did James Watson just get smug as a Will Power fan? Haven't you learned by now?
Hey, his recent performances at the Indy GP is the only thing I've really had to celebrate the last 3 years. Let me have this.
Well, now that we won't let James pick him, he'll probably start doing poorly again.
That is correct.
I think Grosjean is another story, too, because he was on the podium in both Indy GP races, if I'm not mistaken. I won the pole for the first one. So with Andretti, he'll probably finish 5th, but he'll be really fast. Yeah. I think there's if I was betting for pole, I would bet on Roman Grosjean. Because one thing, Andretti will be very fast in qualifying. And I would not be shocked at all if Grosjean was on pole and ended up finishing like 4th. Because Andretti just screwed him throughout the race somehow. That seems about what will happen. And Scott
Andretti
McLaughlin
has a
will end up
knack.
in first. I think McLaughlin will win, and Andretti will finish 4th, and, etc.
This is the Will Power / Simon Pagenaud Penske dominated track, more so than any other road course on the circuit. Like I was looking at the historical wins. It's like Power, Pagenaud, Power, VeeKay basically over the last several years. I don't know how you could bet against Will Power this weekend.
Looking at the numbers here, Will Power's career finishes first, 11th, 1st, 6th, 20th, 7th, 1st, 19th, 1st, and 8th. It seems like Will Power is either winning this race or absolutely nowhere to be found.
I mean, I'm looking at last year's because I think that's probably the best indication of where things are going to be this year. Is the first one you've got VeeKay, Grosjean, Palou as your podium, and the next one you've got Power, Grosjean, and Herta is your next one. So,
yeah, and there's not going to be any rain or mixed conditions on Saturday. Like, we're looking at Chamber of Commerce weather, low to mid 80s both days with patchy clouds. It's going to be an absolutely perfect weekend to be out at the track. And
you're making me look at flights again.
I can't wait to be out there this weekend. I'm going to be out both days watching all 3 Road to Indy races, the 2 lights races, and then the GMR Grand Prix. And it is going to be a glorious day of open wheel racing.
We get it, Jason. You live in Indy.
Yeah,
in Virginia, there's no IndyCar races within 8 hours.
If you're lucky.
I'm sorry, IndyCar has a horrible strategy in order to address the population in the northeastern United States. I mean, I thought that they really had something going when they had the Boston Grand Prix until that guy embezzled all the money. But
and the Baltimore one until we got a new mayor.
Well,
and this thing, and then that thing, and et cetera.
It's kind of interesting that you say that, Ben, because it goes back to the whole F1 racing in parking lots thing. If you're not racing on city streets, you don't have to worry about changes in politics. But we're not going to go back to that discussion. What do we make of Rinus VeeKay this weekend? Because I'm looking him up on the.
He's a contender.
He's absolutely a contender. Yeah,
I agree. I think he's more than a contender at this point.
I have an issue betting on VeeKay over someone like Newgarden or Power or McLaughlin with Penske. He had a bad race at Barber because he didn't test there.
For him.
I don't know that you can. Can you count on a podium for Power? Because he hasn't finished below 4th this year. And this is, I think we can agree, his best track.
Ben, I don't actually think you can. I just had to work in the count pun.
Oh, God. Jason, I've had too much vodka for puns. I'm not gonna understand them. I'm just gonna get upset and rant. That's all I'm gonna do.
Well, okay, so we've talked a little bit here about, obviously, the Team Penske domination. What do we think is possibly the surprise of the weekend then?
Kirkwood.
Yeah, I think he'll get screwed by Foyt strategy or something. They won't take a tire off, the fuel won't go in, car will fall apart.
It should be the track that he has the most experience at. But it's the track that everybody has the most experience at because they run it 4 times a year.
I was going to say, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 races here since 2020. Is this the kind of place that you would, of the road courses, you would expect guys like Jimmy Johnson or even Scott McLaughlin? I mean, Scott McLaughlin has 2 starts here already. Alex Palou has 5 starts now at the Indy road course. Some of the names that you go, they're new-ish, they've got a lot of starts here. It seems like that would sort of balance the field out a little bit to me.
Well, plus all the Road to Indy guys have multiple races plus the fall test, and that's 2 additional days on the track. Like, there's no shortage of surface and physical layout knowledge of this track among the paddock. I mean, this may actually be, and I root for Calderon to do better every week, but this may be one of the races where she's distinctly at a disadvantage due to track knowledge.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, Jimmy was about 8/10 off at the second Indy GP last year, which was like a big step for him. He was like within a second of Blow and Dixon, who were up front qualifying. I think this is one of those where you sit here and you go, oh my God, the whole field is within a second of each other in qualifying.
Well, is this then a race that you expect Jimmy Johnson to not necessarily outkick the coverage, but he's got a lot of laps here now at this point?
It's one where you don't go, oh, good, he passed Calderon. It's expected, like, oh, like I want him to be fighting Daly and DeFrancesco and running in like, oh, he's in 19th, he's in 16th. That's where he should aim for. You got your 2 starts. Go aim for that top 20. With all the cars in the field now, that's more of an accomplishment than it sounds. Yeah, this is not a, oh, well, he didn't wreck. It's like, no, you need to do well here. Well, scaled to what you've done, but you need to pick it up a notch here. This is your pick it up a notch moment. In the same way that he went to Texas and he just said, yeah, that's what we were hoping to see, right? We said, yeah, Jimmy, he should have a good run. We want him to be in the top 10, and he was killing it. Running one in the top 20, that's what we want. It should be a Texas-like weekend, not in terms of position, but in terms of he did what we wanted and a little more.
It's an interesting thought process because where do you go from Jimmy Johnson's perspective? I mean, obviously you have to go up. He's entering the season or entering the race weekend, I should say, 19th in points. However, you look at the cars that are immediately ahead of him, and it's the 06 from Meyer Shank. You're talking Elio Castro Neves, a guy that's got 4 Indy 500s. Aaron McLaren, Rahal Letterman. The only one that really kind of sticks out to me is the 51 of Takuma Sato, but that's a Dale Coyne car. So that car's been good in the past. This really could be a weekend that we see the field within 1 second of each other, like Ben mentioned. Does that mean we're expecting a little bit more physicality out of these drivers then?
Argy Bargy is going to play heavily in turn 1 and 2. Very certain of that at some point in this race.
We call that grab ass in this country, by the way.
I think pit strategy is going to become a big deal. Getting your pit stops right, getting your in laps and your out laps, and getting everything nailed down perfect. Because it's going to be a tight field. Andretti, you hear that, Andretti? You hear that, Michael? It'll be tight. You got to get your pit stops right.
Brian Herta can't hear you. He's too busy trying to field a 7th Hyundai car in IMPC.
You could get a Hyundai ride at this point. You got your TCR wheel.
I legit probably could. I mean, I do have 2 Hyundai products in my garage, so.
Well, yeah, there you go. You can get on Brian Herta Autosport. That's about the bar,
I think, to drive for Brian Herta Autosport.
So long as the check clears, I believe is the accurate one there. So, okay, so let's look ahead here then, as we are getting dangerously close to the 1 hour mark of this podcast.
Hit that.
We're getting close to it. So let's make our picks for this weekend. Winners and anchovies. We'll call them pineapples even this week.
James picks last.
Yes, actually, let me get the spreadsheet open here so we can see who's actually going to pick in what order. This will be, since Christian's here and he will not be picking, this means Jason Owens is first round up. You are on the clock in the first round of the Pizza at the Pagoda picks draft.
I'm going to take Will Power to win the race.
You whore.
Didn't even wait.
Oh, that's awesome. He's just spiteful this evening.
No, I actually I teed that up earlier. I actually think he's going to win this race.
I think it's okay. Let's call it what it is. If you take anybody but Team Penske and especially Will Power, you're kind of silly. They have absolutely owned the road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
100%.
Which means it is time for me to pick second, and I'm going to take Joseph Newgarden. Because, again, this is a place where if you go anything other than chalk, I think you're dumb. Next to pick will be Ben Carswell.
Part of me wants to take McLaughlin just because Penske, but I think...
I remember how Palou was performing before that Honda engine detonated.
Yeah. The thing is, all the top drivers are fast here. But like it was mentioned, I think it is going to get a little physical. In that case, I'm going to take somebody who's not afraid to run into other cars, Romain Grosjean.
Romain Grosjean, who is a very solid pick for this race.
Was on the podium in both races last year in his Dale Coyne car.
Yep. Yes, he has starts of third and first with a pair of runner-up finishes in his 2 races at this racetrack. The more he figures it out, the more dangerous he could be. I think it's not a terrible pick. Leads us to Mike McCullen, your pick to win the GMR Grand Prix of Indianapolis.
Oh, I was gonna say Scotty Mack, but that got stolen away from me. So
no, Scotty Mack's still there.
No, I was gonna go with Grosjean. That got stolen. So Scotty Mack is my number 2.
Good to see that we're on the same line here, Mike.
I don't want to be on the same page as you. That scares me.
So now we have
that's because I'm a genius.
Allegedly.
I wouldn't go there.
Allegedly.
That brings us to the dejected James Watson. And your pick, you are the points leader, so you do pick last in the race winner round here. Who's going to win this weekend at the IMS GP?
I don't even know who to choose. I'm not used to having to choose somebody else. I don't even know who everyone picked. Usually I just kind of tune out when everyone's giving their picks because I already know who I'm choosing.
If you want to go back over the last 5 races, there are still 2 race winners on the board. Scott Dixon getting the win at the 2020 GMR Grand Prix, and Takuma Sato won this race 1 year ago.
Did anyone pick Grosjean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
And you really were tuning us out.
Oh, yeah.
He's driving.
Screw it. I'll go with Herta.
That's an interesting pick here. Colton Herta with finishes of 3rd, 13th, 2nd, 4th, and 23rd in his races here. It's either a really good pick or a really bad pick. And
I mean, the same could be said of who I usually pick every week, so I'm kind of used to that.
Yeah, that's correct. All right, so it is time to start picking anchovies then. Jason Owens, who is your anchovy?
Herta.
You're really just out here to put a hurting on James Watson. What did he do to you tonight?
No, that was my anchovy from like the start of the show.
Okay.
Like, sorry that James thinks he's going to do well, but they're going to underfuel him or drop a lug nut, or put on like 3 primaries and 1 alternate in a pit stop or something absolutely asinine this weekend.
That would be fun. My pick is purely numerology based. This guy, here is his recent performances at the Indianapolis road course. Finishes of 5th, 15th, 5th, 22nd, 8th, and 19th, which means this race, if you follow the pattern, is going to suck for one Pato O'Ward. I think he is your anchovy of the week purely based on numerology, which means Miss Cleo, you better not screw me over this week. Moving off to Mike McCullen, you're next.
Jack Harvey, because we haven't talked about him all season. And he was so good last year, and he is so nowhere this year.
Jack Harvey is an interesting pick. 2 races last year, he finished 6th and 23rd. The 3 races in 2020, finishes of 6th, 8th, and 17th, and he had a podium in 2019 on debut at the IMS road course. I would say that probably would be then, if he finishes mid-pack, probably a pretty decent anchovy, because I would imagine the team is expecting some good things out of Jack Harvey this weekend. Ben, who is it then? Who is the anchovy of the week?
I'm going to go with Rinus VK, because I think the expectations are really high for him, and I think everyone's gotten better. And I think ECR is going to stumble a little bit. I think it's just going to be tough for him to meet those expectations that we have of him.
Do we
here
think
at this track that he won at?
Do we think Ed Carpenter puts too much pressure even on the road course at the Speedway?
No, I don't think so. I don't think anybody places nearly the value at the road course that they would at the Speedway.
Interesting. All right, James, it is your turn to make your pick.
Graham Rahal.
Oh, I was going to take that. I was going to pick Rahal.
That may not be the worst pick you've ever made.
I think that's pretty wise.
I was thinking about it, but then, like, even last week when he was doing all that ridiculousness, he was in 7th, which is a very Rahal position to be in.
He's had some really good finishes on the road course here, though.
I was going to say, let's look back through the numbers here. Graham Rahal with finishes of 7th, 5th, 7th, 7th, 2nd, 9th, 9th, 6th, 4th, 2nd, and 21st back in 2014.
Good pick, James.
You know what, though? With the attitude and the kind of baggage that he's carrying into this weekend, if I'm Graham Rahal, I want this to be my dog crap weekend. Get it out of your system, and then you head into the 500.
If we define our anchovy as failing to meet expectations in a bad way, Rahal not finishing in the top 10 is him not meeting expectations, because that's what we expect of him.
That's what I'm saying.
Expect him to be in the top 10. Well, not even at the IMS road course, just period. He's a top 10 driver every week. He'll be 8th, 9th.
Do Graham Rahal things. Finish a solid 7th to 9th every week. But with that, it's time for us to wrap up our coverage here for the evening anyway, or for the recording session. Looking forward to a pretty fun weekend this coming weekend for the GMR Grand Prix of Indianapolis. Once again, running this Sunday, 207.3 miles, 85 laps around the 2.439 mile Indianapolis road course. 6 sets of primaries, 4 sets of alternates on Saturday afternoon. We posted a little bit of a schedule here. We're only going to give you Sundays, though, because we're going to try to go wall-to-wall coverage on the 500 here. We're going to start it this Sunday with the Indy GP watch-along. Jason, will you be at the Speedway Sunday?
I will not be at the Speedway on Sunday because the race is on
Saturday. Whatever. God almighty. You will be at the racetrack on Saturday.
I will be at the racetrack, and as long as it doesn't violate any FCC regulations, I will try and join in the stream for a little bit from wherever I'm sitting.
That is fantastic. We'll see what happens in front of Jason Owens then a little bit. We'll be having live coverage not at 3:00, probably a little closer to 3:30. Airtime on NBC and Peacock is 3:00. But it looks like a green flag time of about 3:45 or so. So we'll come on the air about 3:30. But with that, it is time for us to get the heck on out of here. Thank you very much for checking in with us. If you haven't listened to it yet, check out the interview with Rick Mears on the Dale Jr. Download. That was just a fantastic show this week. looking forward to hearing more of that stuff coming out. And we also have the 4-time winners special that will be debuting at some point over the next week or so. That one's going to be pretty cool as well, with all 4 of the 4-time winners before the passing of Al Unser earlier, late last year, I should say. But with that, we're getting the heck on out of here. Check us out on all the National Racing Network socials, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, Twitter. I think we have a TikTok and a Snapchat, but I don't know how to use them. So I'll be the curmudgeon-y old white guy. Once again, thank you much for listening. We're not sure why you do, but we hope you enjoy the show. For Ben Carswell, James Watson, Jason Owens, Mike McCullen, and Christian Jasper, my name is Chris Graham. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We will talk to you all soon. Have a good night, everybody.